Press record. Let's see there. You in the shot and me in the shot. There we go. I think that's me in the shot too. Okay, so I'm sitting with Melody Urive. She is the lead school counselor at King High School within CCISD. So Melody, the reason I'm talking to you is about consultation. Our that's the big topic for this particular class when it comes to school counseling. And so I'll just kind of start with the simple stuff here. Can you give me some of your background information? Like, how many years have you been a school counselor?
I've been a school counselor 12 years.
Okay, and then you taught and coached beforehand, right?
I taught 12 years, high school level. I did special ed, and I also was a head coach for 12 years in high school.
Okay, what did you coach?
My first 3 years, I coached head volleyball, JV basketball, head softball, track, and cheerleading.
Okay, wow.
Then my last 8 years of teaching, I was head coach of cross country and track.
Okay.
At Miller High School.
All right. Now at King High School, of course, you're the lead school counselor here. Can you give me anything about the breakdown of the demographics of this school?
Dominantly Hispanic.
Okay.
And then our next subgroup would be Anglo.
Okay.
White, and then we have very minimal Asian, and then Black, African American is our next subgroups.
Okay.
We have about 1,200 at-risk students.
Okay. Can you describe at-risk just for the group?
At-risk, there's actually 14 indicators by the state that label you at-risk. So a student can have up to 6 indicators, or one indicator. So an example would be like a teen parent. It could be somebody coming out of boot camp. Somebody who's dyslexic actually is the 14th on the at-risk indicator. Somebody who's felt 2 consecutive 9 weeks in a row, that puts them on an at-risk. So sometimes a student doesn't continue to be on an at-risk indicator. They may come off of it, but certain things will keep you on at-risk student, since once you're labeled that. So a student may be at-risk reader, say maybe in kindergarten, and there's a test that they take that will indicate that, and they will keep that. If you're retained, that stays with you as an indicator. Okay.
So you said about 1,200 at-risk students, right?
Here at King.
And about how many students do we have at King?
We have 2,500.
Okay. All right. So about half of
almost
our kids.
Half.
Yeah. All right. So again, we're talking about consultation. And so what can you tell us briefly about your work experience and what led you to become a school counselor?
I think what led me to become a school counselor, actually, I started off being special education. I was, and the 2 schools that I worked at were very economically disadvantaged schools, which is West Oso and Miller.
Okay.
So at the time, they did have a at-risk counselor, intervention counselor. And so that's more the gear that I was going to. And so I think that my personal experience also, just what I went through as a child, has really led me to those, being a counselor. So.
Okay. All right. Can you give me an example of a typical consultation situation?
I have one today.
Okay. Yeah, tell us about it,
that was a little
please.
feisty, but one was a current senior who has attendance issues, an AP student who was needing to make up 208 absences.
Wow.
Make-up hours, actually. And so in order for her to earn credit, at the same time she's having to recover 2 classes in Edgenuity, actually 3, but she just completed a half semester since the beginning of the school year. So parent and I met with our administrator. When you have a student, you guide them from their freshman on to their senior year. This is my 4th year having this student and has had issues with attendance. And so they're very adamant about them graduating at the higher level, like a DAP, which is Distinguished Achievement Plan. Now we went down to recommended. My recommendation at the beginning of the year was to do minimum, because the student is ill, but we still have not been provided documentation by the parent that the student is ill.
Oh, really? Okay.
So even though that's been asked upon, so, you know, when you have those situations, document.
Right.
Because the more documentation you have, the better you can support when things arise, because now we're in a situation the student may not graduate due to makeup hours, due to not completing the courses online. So there's a lot of things that you really have to have your ducks in a row in order to make sure that you're prepared, because they come back and ask, okay, how did you guide this student as far as the graduation plan? Have you spoken to the parent, and why wasn't I notified? So it's good to know, like, when you met with a student, you know, what documentations you've given them. Like, we meet with our seniors at the beginning of the year, give them a transcript, go over the graduation plan, have them sign it that way, and you keep a copy. That way, if a parent comes back and says, my child was informed, yes, they have. Your child was where this is where we're at, things like that. So there's a lot of things that go along with trying to graduate a student. And so sometimes you might know halfway point the student needs to be guided into this certain graduation plan, and that's a conversation that you have with the parent and the student, because you want to make sure that, you know, you're making the right choice for the student, because depending on the college he's going to, definitely. But, you know, that's kind of where we were at this morning. And so, you know, gave the parents some options about summer school and maybe actually going to our alternative campus, but they didn't want those options. So, you know, we'll see if she's able to make it.
Okay. As a school counselor, why do you believe it's important to consult with others?
Because you don't know everything.
Okay.
And there's different branches that you have to know about. You know, you have somebody say dual credit. You may have to call, you know, the person downtown who's in charge of dual credit. You know, there's situations, forms that I have to fill out, and I may have to contact Miss Dr. Rosales as lead counselor this year, that I'm learning how to do that part, those pieces for me. So, you know, there's certain, everybody's in charge of something downtown. Okay. And then on there, you have people who are under there, and so you have to seek. I mean, even here on our campus, I have to work with the registrar. I have to work with the special ed chairperson. I have to work with teachers, you know, on certain situations or students. We have to work with dual credit. You know, my colleagues, my counseling colleagues, are a huge resource. Like, we all seem to specialize and have more information in one area than the other. So, like, sometimes I may know more about 504 information, where somebody may know about college level things that I'm not quite as comfortable yet. I'm still learning that, because I was the intervention counselor for 9 years prior to being so it's different learning the other piece of those puzzles. And so in order to put those pieces together and complete your consultation, you have to depend on others to make sure you're making the best fit and making sure the right decisions and all those for your student.
Okay, great. All right, so could you give me a breakdown of a typical work day? I'm sure days change from one day to the next, but
we drink coffee in the morning. Read the paper. No, typical work day is it just depends, really. I can't sit here and tell you that a typical day is, you know, I'm going to come in and turn in. You know, your typical day would like to be to come in, check your emails, your messages, return phone calls, return emails. But a lot of times that doesn't happen, because as soon as you walk in, student may be wanting to sign up for SAT. You know, they want to know about, Miss, can you check my credits? Dual credit packets are due right now. So also the time of the year is huge too, because those things change day to day throughout the school year. So depending on what's happening, we get more calls. Like, for example, like this time of year, it's dual credit that a lot of students, SATs that they're trying to sign up for. Another thing that we're going to be getting called on is senior parents wanting to know their kids are going to graduate. We get calls up to where can my student take his pictures for senior cap and gown? Okay. We even get those calls. Sure. You know, so we kind of have to know a lot about a lot of information. Summer school's another big one, you know, that we get. EOC, when is the results coming in? Right. So depending on the type of year, the time of year, this is what you seem to get more calls on, and so focus. But the typical day is really kind of like serving whatever walks in the door. Sure. At that time. You know, you try to follow up and complete, you know, what little, you know, what you haven't completed from the day prior, and following up with, consultating with the people on campus. Hey, have you gotten any information on this? So it's just kind of everyday grind.
Okay.
What you do.
Just real quick, and it's something that popped in my mind while you were talking about it was, you were talking about, like, depending on the time of the year, things are going to be different. So you as a crew, the crew of school counselors, what do y'all do to prepare, knowing like this time of the year is coming up? So do y'all have like discussions, meetings, stuff like that?
We have meetings. We'll have a meeting like every other week, depending. Sometimes I'll just do a quick meeting depending on, hey, this is the information I got, this is what we need to do, or we know, like, and we're going into the classrooms next week. We're going to do pre-registration. That's another huge. We're getting ready to pre-register all our campus for next year. Okay. So we have to go into the classrooms. We talk to the kids about their course selection, their graduation plan, and we're choosing classes for next year. So right now, that's our focus. So, like, we're going to have a meeting, and we'll do that. Another resource that we use is our emails. Hey, anybody know about this, and we'll all chime in. So sometimes it's or we just pick up the phone. Sure. So that's how we kind of get our group together, see what's going on. But we do have scheduled meetings, definitely. Okay. But sometimes it's, people are out or people are dealing with crisis. So, and that's another thing that comes up. You may plan your whole day and, you're going to do this, but then you have a crisis. And so you're there with that student for like half a day sometimes, depending on the situation.
Wow. Okay. Let's see here. All right. So, how often do you initiate consultations?
Every day, every minute, every second. Because when I don't have somebody in my office, I am looking at documents. Then I have to pick up the phone. I'll send out an email. I'll meet with my assistant principal. This is a situation with it, or I'm talking to the teacher or student. So or a parent. I have to call the parent on the situation. So consultation is done literally like, I don't, every few minutes. It's done with everybody on the campus. Okay.
And let's see here. Excuse me. What are some of the topics that you typically consult about?
Like I said, time of year. Okay. Pre-registration, credits. Okay. Grad plan. The graduation plan is what we're doing. Summer school. When is testing coming up? Students just took the EOC, so we're going to want to consultation with parents regarding those issues. I think one of our biggest questions this semester and probably the last month is because of the new high school we're looking at veterans. That has been a huge topic, because parents are wanting to know who can go, we're having to pre-register those students, and they're asking what is their curriculum going to look like. So we're kind of doing 2 schools right now this year, so it's been a little different this year for us.
And I guess another thing that I'm wondering about is like when you because you're the lead counselor, so I'm guessing a lot of people come to you for some consultation input, especially like if they're dealing with like a difficult client situation, or I say client-student situation. Right. Is there, like, for example, like you had a couple of counselors start this year, or is it just one counselor that started this year?
We actually had 2 brand new counselors. One that was an elementary counselor that moved up like in November. Brand new counselor this year. Okay. Was just a teacher, so brand new. And then we had our career counselor go to an academic counselor. So really we had 3 to the academic part. So it's been a learning curve for them as well. So they've all done great, but adding that piece also has been a little bit difficult because, they do come to you and you have to help them out because there's so many aspects to being a high school counselor, from, junior referral to special ed, 504s, RTI. So a lot of the process is a lot different, if you haven't been at the high school level. So, and just knowing how to handle different situations, sometimes, just looking at a grad plan, even our seasoned counselor sometimes, will come or, hey, can you look it over? And so, sure, is there anything you can see different? And so sometimes I'm able to think outside the box because of my experience as an intervention counselor. So that's a plus. So a lot of times I can look outside, outside the box and say, okay, why don't we try this, this, and this? And I think that's one thing I am grateful for having that experience, because sometimes they're very at-risk kids, which may seem sometimes helpless. I'm able to come up with a plan for them.
Okay.
So, and ultimately see them graduate, which is huge, and that's what we're here for, for the kids.
Right. Two other things that you were saying, there was two things that while you were talking that came to my mind. One was we had a very unique situation here at King earlier with the passing of a teacher. What kind of consultation went into place?
When that happens, you have to have a crisis. We have a crisis team, and the district has steps on who to notify. Principal is, of course, the first point of contact, and decides, who she's going to contact about, her boss and things like that. One is, getting in contact with our director for counseling in the district, Dr. Leah Rosales, and then from there we have a crisis kit, and that's something you're supposed to have prepared. And then on your campus for these types of situations, and there's a manual that the district provides, and your forms are there, and this is the process that you go through. It was very shocking, to all of us, but I think our school was, under the circumstance, handled it very well. And so, we just kind of went through the process and decided as a team what's the best way to handle it and who needs to be involved, and go from there and make sure that, most of all, that our kids are taken care of. But at the same time, this one was a little bit more unique because it was a teacher. It also impacted our co-workers, So usually it's a student that has, a tragedy, but when it's a teacher, it hits both the faculty and, not that a student doesn't, but this particular teacher was here for a very long time, almost 20 years, so it had an impact on a lot of us.
I'm just wondering, were there any obstacles that arose during the actual time that needed to be overcome, needed to be consulted about?
I think one of the things was, how much information do you want to share?
Okay.
Some things needed to be confidential, and so that's a decision that your principal and admin from downtown need to make. I mean, it's not a counselor's decision on what type of information, and from there, whatever they tell us to proceed with is how we would handle the situation.
Okay. And then what was the other thing? Oh, brother. I think I hit it. But anyway, all right. So, what are the topics did we already discuss that one? What are the topics you typically consult about? Okay, all right then. What is consultation to you, just in general, and what do you see as your role?
Consultation, there's so many types of different consultations. Like I said, I've already told you, we work with so many staff members and teachers and things like that. We do a lot of, we do meet with our students who have crisis or do have, may have a hard time and maybe breaking up with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, that may be an issue that we do and we deal with, sometimes with the kids. And definitely we will counsel with those students about their personal issues, but it's hard in a school setting because with the constant knocking at the door, emails, phone calls, you sometimes can't give your student the counseling one-on-one that you would if you're like an LPC private counselor. Sure. The environment is totally different in a public school setting, but we do address issues with our kids, like social media, what is appropriateness, that's huge. We've also actually gone into classrooms and done social media bullying. So those are things that we also inform our kids about. So as far as the consultation, I think one right now is really the academic part about it. We're getting time crunch with our seniors, and our biggest population that we see a lot of times is our seniors. Whereas a freshman, you may see them once. Sometimes you may, depending on on if you see them, you'll see them during the pre-registration, and then sometimes you may not see them the rest of the year. And then you'll have your regulars, that check in, and that's fine. And that's what we do. But right now, our typical it will be a lot of our seniors right now and parents calling. So a lot of our consultations are with our seniors, you know, about attendance, you know, their grades. You know, I've always tried to meet with all my students at least once throughout the school year. Right. You know, about their grades prior to the semester ending. That's just my practice that I try to do, especially with the freshmen, because they're so like in November, I will pull all my freshmen and start calling them in just to introduce myself. And it's hard because, you know, I plan on doing that, and I've been in situations where I call 20 students out, but then I have a crisis. So all the students have to go back to class. So that's why it's hard to say what is a typical day, because you really don't know what the typical day. In your head, you'll say, okay, I'm going to do this and this, but then it just gets white, because sometimes you'll get called to a meeting. And so you're like, okay, or you get pulled into the principal's office about an issue with another student, but then you have 10 kids waiting. So what do you do? So it's time management, it's learning how to be organized, and sometimes all that you just throw out the door and say, okay, I'll just deal with it later.
Sure, okay.
So
about how many kids are on your...
My caseload, there's about 367 right now.
Okay, so, and would you say about 1 to 350, 1 to 400 is the typical ratio at a high school? What about next year with the new skills starting?
It'll probably be the same, because we are losing counselors. So though we're losing, you know, the numbers, we're also, in addition, we're also losing counselors on our campus.
Okay, so the ratio will pretty stay the same. All right. Let's see here. And then what group do you find, well, right now I figure it's seniors, but what groups do you find yourself consulting with the most?
I think it's our seniors, definitely. That's one of our huge groups, because, like I said, they're worried about college, getting into college, filling out reference letters, learning how to sign up for the TSI. How do you even get into college? You know, Miss, am I going to graduate? You know, so those are the biggest group that you do see throughout the year, and that you focus on. Unfortunately, you do. And the reason why is because depending, I guess too, I forgot to say this, depending on how your high school is broken up into. For us, we're alpha.
Okay, right.
Whereas some of the high schools in Corpus and CCISD are by grade level.
Oh, really? Okay.
So that may be a lot different for some. So my plate looks a lot different than somebody who does maybe just a 9th grade, you know, that are 9th grade as a scientist. So it's different.
Okay. About how many students are you expecting next year here at King?
About, well, it depends who you ask. What we have on our choice sheets and what downtown has are two different things. Okay. So I'm going to be honest.
Okay. But you definitely expect a decrease, nevertheless.
Oh yeah. We're at least 600 decrease.
Okay.
600 to 800, depending on who you ask.
Okay, all right.
Just leave it at that.
I got that. Let's see here. And who are the people you consult with the most?
Really, my colleagues, my counseling colleagues are the ones that I consult with the most. Okay. Because we're always chattering about, hey, you have this student, what are you doing? You know, I have 5 missed calls from the counselors, you know, because there's situations that arise, you know, or you'll pass by and 2 of them are talking and you're like, what's that about? And then you're like, oh yeah, I had that situation, blah, 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 you know. So I think really it's our among each other that we consult the most with. Okay. I mean, our students yes, we do our students, but I shouldn't say that, but I guess it's the students, and then depending on the situation, among is the counselors. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. And is that mostly internal, or do you think that would you group in like downtown?
Depends on the situation.
Well? Yeah. Okay.
Like this morning, we called another high school. Hey, what are y'all doing in this situation?
Oh, okay.
So we do consult with even our counselors at other schools. About certain issues.
Okay. All right. And that's pretty much all I have. I kind of have a 2-parter question. I'll just put it to you this way. It's basically anything that you think, anything that I didn't touch on that you'd like to share, or in general, maybe even not limited to school counseling. Is there any other message maybe that you have for school counselors that are still in training right now?
It's very fast paced. I think people have the impression that it's a coffee sip, drink, don't eat donuts, even though we had donuts today. But it's a very fast paced job. Do you get stressful? Yes, you do.
Okay.
Because sometimes you just feel like you're being pulled so many ways and then you can never get things done. So time management, being organized is huge. I think a lot of people who are not organized, they're going to find themselves that they're going to have to get organized because you get so many manuals, information thrown, all the time. Policies change, course catalog, RTI, 504, special ed, dual credit, ACT dates, attendance, there's just so much. I mean, there's way too much, and so you have to be organized and know how like if it, I have parents come in. Well, how many credits do I have? I have principals to come in. Okay, well, you know what? Yeah, the computer's good, but we all do a tally hand one also that we do, and we break it down even more personalized for each student. So out of my 360 kids, I do a hand tally for every student to check their credits to make sure I place them in the correct classes. Do you make mistakes? Yes, you do. But that's why, and one big piece of advice is check your credits like at least 3 or 4 times a year.
On your individual students?
Your individual students, especially your seniors. You need to do 2 checks, like per semester. Okay. Because you'll find out, you'll get a lot of new kids that you miss. For some reason that kid failed, you forgot to put them in. There's situations that happen. I'm not going to sit here and say everybody's perfect and everything. There's not. So you have to be very conscientious about, your students, because really you're the one that are guiding the students for as far as graduation. Okay. And you've got to make sure that they're on the right graduation path for graduation.
That's great input. Is there anything else that you feel like adding, or do you think we pretty much covered it all? I keep seeing heads at your windows. So.
It's okay. That's what I was saying. I think just be aware that what to do in a crisis. I think sometimes you'll be shocked of what happens and the type of situations you deal with. Okay. You're not going to be prepared for all of them. Okay. What you see in school is not what happens when you get into the counseling position. It's different. And I think learning how to, one of the hardest things that I had as a new counselor was when I did get into a crisis situation with a student who's been maybe abused or going through an ordeal. You can't believe that student's going through that ordeal, and learning how to separate and being professional and not getting emotionally involved so much. Right. You want to be there for the student, but if you don't separate yourself from that and you take it home, it can run you down. And that's one of the things that I remember my first encounter with being a counselor. There was a student that I had that I adored, and I just couldn't believe, and he was from boot camp, and I loved him so much because you could tell he had so much potential. Right. And so, I went home and I cried, and then I realized, okay, I can't do that. If I did this with every student, I can't be a counselor. Right. So I had to learn, and you'll learn through the process your first year. And I, even now, I had shared with you, in my 12 years of counseling, I see the worst abuse that I ever had. My 12 years, just this past December. And just seeing that was, we all gasped. And you would never think that it was a student. No flags, no nothing. Great kid. Not a troublemaker, no attendance issues. A/B student. So even the ones that you don't expect, it happens to them. So those are the kind of things that I think sometimes if you learn how to handle yourself and try to disconnect, be there for them, but if not, you'll be a wreck. Right. Sure. You can't do that. So.
Okay. Well, thank you so very, very much.
You're welcome.
All right. Let's stop this. What do we do?